In Pit Lane, proudly brought to you by Online Invent, websites, digital marketing and custom software.
I've been racing here since 1971 or 2, but I've been coming here since I was a little kid in the 60s, you know, so my dad used to bring me along. He had a little racing car, a special MG, and then like a Lotus 11 replica, so it's like old homework. I mean, I've been here since, mind you, but I've done a lot of miles around here. It's a beautiful little track, and you know, it's terrific. I love historic racing. You know, I say that to everybody because it makes me feel relatively young. It's got elevation change, and elevation change always makes a track interesting. It's got some climbing, some downhill, some off-camber, some cambered corners, quite short, you know, it's the straight's only probably a little bit longer than Winton short track, but it's got a lot of character and it flows really nicely, and any race driver wants things to flow.
Well, Kevin Bardler called it a miniature Mount Panorama. I mean, is that a good description?
I guess, you know, that's probably half an analogy, you know. Mount Panorama's way more complex than this is, but this is, compared to a lot of our short circuits in Australia, this is quite complicated, it's quite tricky. I mean, my friend Joh Bowe's here for the first time, and you know, it's a thing to learn. You know, it's not something that you jump in and just go point and squirt. So. Joh had this car in America, and he raced it at Laguna Seca. It's a 1973 sports prototype March 2 litre. So it's got a 2 litre BMW engine, fuel injected. It was very popular category in the 70s, into early 80s. Hang on a minute. We tried to do an interview.
I'll be honest with you.
We're trying to do an interview, television.
So we got that.
Hang on, I'll be 5 minutes.
I'll get a hug too. You got that. Turn around and say hello to the viewers on Channel 31 Melbourne.
There's the camera. Say hi.
There we go.
Yeah, so
they're very friendly people.
They are terrific. I mean, I spent a large part of my life in Devonport, so I'm a very, I love Tasmania, of course. So, you know, to race here, and Joe's going to sell this car, so I hope it stays in Australia because it's quite special, it's beautiful to drive, and you know, you can, if you have the wherewithal, you can take it anywhere in the world. They have races in America, particularly Europe, England. You know, there's no end to what you can do with it. So I hope someone in Aussie buys it and keeps it here because it's beautiful. I'm fortunate in my racing life. I've had lots of people let me drive their cars, so I hope it continues a bit longer, Brett.
My old man had a Wolseley, and the first car I ever remember was a Wolseley.
Yep.
I never thought I'd see one race. Yeah, tell me about it. What is it?
It's a 1963 or 64 2480 originally. The gentleman I bought it off, Mr. Tyning, he actually, and his father actually made it into a two-door and put the flares and stuff on it just for a bit of regularity racing. They modified it to get rid of the Wolseley engine, put a Holden 202 in it, which is got a yellow tail head, cam, and a 4-barrel Holly on it.
So that's an improvement.
That's an improvement. They also put a short and Commodore disc brake diff in it, and put Honda discs on the front of it. Now, it doesn't handle real well at the moment, but we will get there.
So how long you had it?
We've probably had it for about 3 or 4 months. We haven't run it yet. This is the first event for my son to run it, just to have a little bit of fun in it. As you see, they've modified the firewall to get a bit more room to fit in there. And yeah, they really had a lot of fun. It's quite easy to get. The tunnel's been modified so we can pull the gearbox out nice and easy, which at the moment it's only a 3-speed. We're actually just purchased a 4-speed last night for it actually, because the ratios aren't real good at the moment. And we're in talks with a mate actually about putting a turbo on it as well, make it really quick. As you know, when you go racing, you want to go faster and faster.
And spend more and more money.
Yeah, you just don't tell the wife that.
Get the phone ringing for your business with website development and SEO services from Online Invent. Visit onlineinvent.com.au.
Welcome back to the Baskerville Historics for 2023. Well, the car behind me is one of the most famous sports sedans of all time, and it's not a replica, it's the real thing. And the man behind it, one of the people behind it, is Bruce Gowan. And Bruce, the Repco powered Celica. This is a car with quite a history, isn't it?
It is. We originally commissioned the car for building in 1976, and we spoke to John McCormick about it, and because he'd built the Charger, and he said, yes, I can put a Repco V8 in that, and a nice Hewland DG300 in it. And he then had one of his employees, a fellow by the name of Simon Aram, who is well known in motor racing circles in Adelaide, and his design and engineering in this car has been unbelievable. And the proof of how good it is, that today, or yesterday in qualifying, we were about a second a lap quicker than the later model sports sedans here.
It is amazing, and as you say, the thing about this car is, you mentioned Repco. I mean, the Repco Holden motor from Formula 5000. A lot of the cars, particularly even the Formula 5000s that were powered by Repco Holdens in the day, have sort of been reborn, and for cost reasons and all the rest, they put Chevs into them.
Yes.
But this is the original article, and tell us about the Repco Holden engine, the 5-litre engine.
Well,
it's a beautiful looking engine, great sounding. And tell us about it.
Yes, well, the original engines were developed by Repco to compete against the Chev's engines that were coming in from America, and it didn't quite get to the horsepower levels of the Chev initially, but they got there in the end with a flat plane crank. Now that has its own interesting issues in as much that it sets up a high frequency torsional vibration, and in some of the Formula 5000 cars it was causing the frames to crack. So we overcame that in the Celica. We didn't want body cracking and issues with the aluminium by just mounting the engine with some little old spring shackles to absorb the impact, where the Formula 5000 had the engine mounted solidly. And we've had no issues. And of course a Formula 1 car always has a flat plane crank, and this sounds a bit like one of them. We don't go to 10,000 revs, we go to about 7.5, and it's brilliant. Well, we sold it in 1981, and as happens with most race cars, people get hold of them and they try and put their own thoughts into it. Gradually the car gets slower and slower and ends up somewhere where nobody wants anything to do with it. Cut a long story short, in 2006, after I'd retired, I just had a look on the internet one night about my car. Where was it? Found it in Western Australia. I rang the guy up and he said, I've got it here, not much of it left. Went across and had a look at it, and of course the sentimentality of the car, I said to him, can I buy it back? He said, yes, you can have it. So I purchased it from him. And it's been a massive exercise, took 10 years. Several people had a go at rebuilding the chassis and the engine. And we got there in the end, and CAMS worked very closely with us, CAMS as it was then called, now Motorsport Australia, in making sure that it was an exact replica. And they looked and dotted every I, and it's since had a certificate of approval issued, so it's the best replica of an original car that you could have.
Okay, let's talk about the car you're standing in front of at the moment. I never thought I'd see it again, but of course this is not the original. Tell us the story about how this particular car came to be.
Well, it's a lovely story, and years ago when the original car disappeared, there was no historic sports sedans, there was no interest much in historic cars, so we let it go. But time moves on, and Simon, the Benz moved on and was bought back from New Zealand by Simon. And when he bought it back, he rang me and we had some discussions about the Benz. And in that discussion, in a very short time, we talked about this car, the fact that it's a pity it disappeared, the original car. And just out of the blue, he said to me, could you build another one? And it took me back a little bit, because it's an opportunity that you could possibly not dream of. Anyway, I took it on board, and in our archives we had about 100 photos of the original car. And I spoke with Bryan, and we have had approaches before to build replicas and things, but lots of people, you're not sure whether they do it justice. And Simon said, look, I only want you to build it, there's no one else to build it. And so we went ahead, and to Simon's credit, we'd never met until we'd bought parts for the car. And I extended my workshop at home, and 3 years ago he delivered a body shell to me. But by that time we'd already bought quite a few of the suspension components, and I had most of the design work done on my head and drawings done and all that sort of thing. And then we've spent 3 years creating the car, and I've had great help from a mate of mine the last year, and he he helped me immensely in the creation, the last finishing up of it. But you know, it's been a work. It's a huge amount of work, but it's so gratifying and so to be given the opportunity. And you know, it's a very special man that will do that for you, and that's Simon. And he's Simon Fitzner, and he's
So
a
the
great.
original car, I mean, a lot of the stuff was based on a McLaren M10B.
Yes, well, this still is. Simon's questions were, what was the original like? And that's his thing. What was it like in the time? And it's got all McLaren uprights, brakes, front and rear uprights. Geometry is a little bit different to what it was then. We had a couple of shots at it back then. And originally we built the original car out of a new body shell. But this, of course, was a 60-year-old shell 50 years later. And it was a great opportunity. And so we used the rusty shell and created a full chassis in it, just to try and make it meet more safety standards of, you know, 50 years. Sports moved on a bit. But to keep the original concept and all that sort of thing. So we've worked hard at it. Unfortunately, we're not running today. We're because of
We arrived just in time to see the cloud of smoke.
oh yeah, it's embarrassing.
So
But-
what happened? You know what was the fuel line?
Yeah, it has a residual heat problem in the thing. The original car did exactly the same type of thing. We thought we had it covered, but obviously not well enough. And so back to the workshop. It's not repairable here, and we're not going to try. But back to the workshop, a rethink on how we have certain parts of it. But we'll be out and we'll be back on the historic circuit again with we'll be going to Adelaide next year. We'll have it on display at Sandown next weekend. And it was a bit ironical because I said to Simon in the first place, we're building a race car, we're not building a display car. And the twice that it's been in public, it's a display car.
G'day Brett, how you doing?
Not too bad. Good to see you again.
Good
Got
to see you back.
a new toy.
New toy, good to see you back in Tassie.
It's great to be back. Tell us about this. Where did this come from? What's
This car was originally, it came from America, in actual fact. Lived over in America, raced Indianapolis was its first race meeting. Probably about 18 months later, it ended up in New Zealand for roughly 10 years, and then it found a way back to Australia.
So what about past drivers? Anyone famous behind the wheel?
I don't know all the past drivers, and this guy's not the famous fast driver as of yet, but no, we'll do our best. What I can say is, I mean, Neil Rear, he was a pretty damn good driver from Western Australia. He went on to Kim Ledger. He was also really well known in the circles. James Crozier had the car, and I acquired the car from David Crabtree, which is quite well known around Formula 5000 open wheeler circles. It's going on its own today.
So what's the, you've been out there today, we've got seen you on track out there, how's it running?
I'm really happy with the car. It's not running to its optimum performance motor-wise at this moment in time, so like pretty much all race cars, everybody's got a story. It's work in progress. We got some old tyres, which Fred Flintstone would be pretty happy with, I'm sure. But I didn't want to. I only got the car really going last weekend, so this is a baptism of fire where I'll come in, have a run, enjoy all the other competitors, do what I can do. Like we always are, we'd like to go faster, but we'll get there. And this is its first meeting here in little old Tasmania, so have plans on being able to go and run some rounds over in the mainland, like Winton or Malala or Phillip Island, etc., like that. Because
so what's the engine of that?
Engine. So the car itself is a Royal Car T4. It was the second last one made. The motor is a Ford Cosworth motor, which obviously this weekend is all about probably Joh Bowe being the patron. Pretty famous guy who held the outright lap record here in Tasmania for I think it was 36 years, something like that. You probably know better than me. But, and that was in the Lucky Nuts Royal Car T4, which is really quite a famous car. But routes across the world, they really were the precursor to Formula One for the drivers, the Cross, the, I've lost the name to tell me, but that's where they come from. And they went through this and the category, and what a fantastic chassis.
Well, they totally dominated Formula Pacific, didn't they?
They sure did. This was known as the Formula Atlantic car. It was amazing the category of the open wheelers here in Australia. And it's a real shame that we don't see more of them out there, because for any of the drivers, if you look like Scott McLaughlin, at the end of the day, yes, they did the V8s and so on, but they go to America and they're in the Indy cars, so it is all open wheelers. And I think it's fair to say that the kids growing up these days, if they could do the karts, they might move on to Formula Vs, they might do Formula Fords, they end up in these sorts of cars, and then sky's the limit, depending on how successful they are.
So what about driving this in Baskerville? What's it like? What do you think of the track?
This Baskerville track is just amazing. It's so much fun to drive. I've talked to a couple of the mainland competitors here, and you have to be on your A game all the time, the undulation, etc. It's obviously old school. If you went up onto the hill over there and look down, and you can see everything, you can sit in the car, rain, hail, shine, listen to the music, or eat a hamburger, whatever it may be, and then come down to the pits. I think you'll find most Tasmanians are pretty friendly, like having a good old chat, so no, it's great. It's just a fantastic event, and the camaraderie between the fellow open-wheeler drivers is great. For sure, sometimes things might get a little bit heated on a track and a little bit later in the pits, but everybody has the same goal to try and get everybody else out there, and there's so much support and help from the others. It's fantastic.
Well, it is great to see these cars. We don't see enough of them really out there. They are an important part of Australian motorsport. They were the sort of what came after the Formula 5000s, and unfortunately, a lot of them seem to have just disappeared from view. So it's great to see them out.
Thank you very much. There must be so many in sheds, museums and so on, that all we can do is encourage people to come out and have fun. They don't actually have to do the race heats. They can actually go in a regularity, so they can bring their older cars out, have a squirt, scare the Jesus out of them, so to speak, and out of themselves, and go home.
I think a dedicated Formula Atlantic Pacific race at Baskerville for next year's Baskerville Historics sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it's great. I'm looking forward to developing the car a little bit more, or setting the car up is the proper word for it, and hopefully be not quite a few seconds off the times that I've been doing this weekend, but that's okay. That should all come.
We hope you've enjoyed our visit to the 2023 Baskerville Historics. If you're a true race fan, then you really should be planning a visit for next year's event. If you're a racing driver, then you must go. This track is one of world motorsport's greatest secrets, and this meeting is one of the friendliest I've been to anywhere over a long time of going to motorsport events. Thank you once again to the committee from the Baskerville Historics who made it possible for us to once again be at the meeting. We had a great time. Thank you to event sponsors, the RACV Club in Hobart, for putting us up for the weekend as well. To keep up with all our latest news and events, subscribe to the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, and please follow us on Facebook. But that's all we have time for this week, so until next week, stay safe, be happy, from all of the team here at In Pit Lane.